And I ministered to at-risk youth in the San Francisco Bay Area for 15 years and 2 years out here in Southern California, and families, just entire families, but a lot of focus on at-risk youth. Okay, so one of the things that I speak a lot about is addiction. And so when I got saved, I was a suicidal young woman, had an addiction, all these things, anorexic, bulimic, really, really hard life. My dad was gang affiliated in the prisons, prison gangs. So all that being said, I began to minister to at-risk youth, and the reason why I think the Lord had me with them is because, for one thing, I was not shy to call people out on their addictions. And it's not like I was a know-it-all, but I would say, honey, I feel like you're dealing with an addiction. God would just show me, right? You have these spiritual radars that go off, it's called discernment. And I would see it, and then I would talk about it, because I wasn't, going to allow it to continue on unless I said something, because here this young person would be in front of me, and I knew in my heart that they were addicted. And so I felt a responsibility to say, are you dealing with an addiction? And if they said no, and I'd say, well, I'm kind of feeling like you are, are you having suicidal thoughts? The Lord would show me sometimes, that a certain young person was thinking about committing suicide. And, very often God would show me certain things that were really detrimental, for their health, for their life, to stay alive. Hopelessness. We had kids in and out of mental institutions. And so, addiction is on the rise. People may not know it, but they are, because they're popping pills. Their parents, some of these kids, their parents are using drugs or alcoholics. And so they've seen a lot too. And so I wanted to talk to you about boundaries for your family. Now, I'm not going to tell you I'm the expert on this, but I do have some knowledge and some wisdom. And also, you want to talk to your pastor, or maybe your counselor or whoever, but I'm going to give you my take, okay? So, because I had an addiction, I understand that there's a lot behind it. So a lot of times people do not talk about the demonic that is behind addiction. They don't. And so I'm going to tell you, I needed deliverance from God, from demonic oppression that was over my life, that, I was addicted. I had strongholds. There were chains holding me down, spiritual chains that were binding me, sexually too, addiction to drugs, like I say, anorexic, bulimic. I had a very odd way of looking at my body as a young woman. 114 pounds. I was skinny as a rail, and all I saw was fat. And so I really did not have a healthy outlook on life, and I just very depressed and really wanted to die. And so because of Jesus, I'm here today. Because of Jesus, I'm alive to preach, and I became a mother of 5. My former husband killed himself while I was pregnant. And so, yes, I've been through a lot and have a lot of experience in this stuff. So I just want to say to you who are parents and pastors, people have to be very distinct on what their boundary lines are for their home. First of all, me as a single mother, I think it's without excuse in my eyes for my life that I would allow bad behavior in my home. Here I am, a woman raising 5 kids on her own, had a child with cancer. My kids are not perfect. I had one child that, was very depressed. There was some concerns there. I had another child that bucked up against me many times, a boy, and becoming a man. And so, I've had my own challenges, but they all turned out good. And so I'm telling you, you can do this even as a single parent, because I had to be a single parent. Their dad's deceased. What choice did I have? But because of what I've been through, I feel like it strengthened me in the end, because I know how to ride the wave of adversity. that comes against my life. I encourage you to read James chapter 1. Talks about faith and endurance. I would encourage you to read that. It's important, I feel, for a Christian to know that. And so that you can endure and believe that you can endure your disrespectful kids, knowing what to do with your dishonorable kids, they look like, they're not going to change, that it will give you hope to hear somebody like me who was that disrespectful kid, who didn't want to listen to my mom when my mom was trying to get a hold of me, and I was going to party and I was going to do what I wanted, even though maybe they didn't set the right examples in some ways in my home. She still tried to get a hold of me the best she could because my dad was doing a lot of time in prison. I wasn't willing to listen to her. I was quite rebellious. But I wanted to talk to you about your boundary lines, okay? Now, you need to know that even if your child doesn't act like they want structure, they actually do. I'm going to tell you they do. And they need it because, it's like I had two friends when I was a youngster who their families just kind of let them go thinking that, I remember one of them would party with her daughter at 14 and she died in a motorcycle accident, that friend of mine. And I remember another friend, she had an accident too, and died young. And, I remember that there was no boundaries, that they just let these girls do whatever. And I'm not blaming the parents, but I'm saying for your children's safety, you have to have boundaries. I mean, if I can set boundaries with my rough background, with their dad committing suicide, you can do it too. You can do life. You can. I mean, I had to be the nurse for my daughter when she had cancer, and I had a newborn baby and other kids, and I was poor, but I didn't make excuses to fall into depression. I didn't make excuses to allow my kids to do whatever they wanted to do. And also, I wasn't such a drill sergeant that they couldn't breathe. Not a perfect mom. I've made mistakes, but what I'm saying to you is it's both. It's both, and you have to go to God and you have to pray and say, what is the boundary lines? Now, if your kid is dealing with addiction, you got to get a hold of that, at least in your home, okay? So if you have a child that's under 18 years old, you have some rights. You sure do have rights. I've taken phones. Well, I'm afraid they're going to hit me. Well, something's wrong with this picture. Something's wrong with this picture. Then you may want to go to your pastor or somebody or a friend or somebody to help get a hold of what's going on there, because nobody should be striking their mother. I had to go into a home of a young man once, and he really respected me as a minister because I really helped him through some tough stuff. And I remember I heard that he was disrespecting his mom. And so I went into the home of this young person, and I remember they were laying on the couch, cocky as could be. And I looked at him, and I seen this poor single mother looking intimidated by her own son. And I said, get off the couch. Open up the blinds. I told the mother, don't allow them to sit in the comfort of your home, lazy, idle, sitting there, disrespecting you. No, no, no. I said, you apologize to your mom right now. And he got up and I said, the Lord's watching what you're doing. And I gave him the scriptures. And he got up and he apologized to his mother. And so I'm just telling you, you may need others around you to help strengthen you. And I would say go to people who have a healthy home life or have been there, okay? I'm not going to go to somebody whose kids are totally disrespectful and go ask them for advice for my kids. I don't know if they would exactly, no disrespect, but I don't know if they'd exactly know what to do, right? So I would go to somebody who has some control in their homes, and I would ask them for some advice, and I would pray. One thing I got to tell you, and I think this has been the thing that has saved me, is I have a powerful prayer life, and that's the truth. I go to God with everything, and I spend a lot of quality time with God. And you could say, well, I work. Well, you know what? I've been working in this season. I just recently lost my job because of this corona, but I was working, and I used to have a catering business, and I was working. And so, but when my daughter had cancer, I couldn't work. And, there's been odd circumstances, and God knows what you're going through right now. If you've lost your job and you're kids are home and it's been hard on you, but you need a support system around you to help you through this time. And so pray to God and ask him, what does that look like for you? You know, who can you talk to? Who can you trust? Who won't be in judgment of you? Because, you know, that's not right. If you're sitting there judging them when they're coming to you for help, well, I don't know if that's very godly. I'm just telling the truth. So, you know, find people, ask God for the people who can be a support to you, and be very prayerful. You know, I pace my floor, and nobody sees me do it. The Lord does. I'm just sharing with you. You know, he'll call me out in the night at 2 o'clock in the morning ever since my 20s. And I see faces, and God has me praying for people. That's my watchman on the wall hours, you know. And so I'm really often praying for moms, single moms or single dads who say, can you pray for my young people? And that's very often who God will show me to pray for, to strengthen the parents and for them to have wisdom to know what to do with them. And if your kids are over 18 and they're getting high in your house, you know, you can't blame yourself. You know, I could have said, well, you know, oh, it's my fault if this happens, or it's my fault if my dad dies because he's on heroin, because, you know, I didn't help him, I didn't take him to the hospital, or I didn't do this. You know what? Enough blame game. Enough blaming yourself. You're not making them do the drugs. They're making the decision. And when are we going to start really trusting in the Lord? When are we going to really start doing what will really make a difference? And that is getting down to praying, getting down to some desperate praying, where you're calling those things that are not as if they were regarding your young people, where you're calling them how God sees them. Lord, I thank you that my son is saved. I thank you, God, that he's going to preach your word. But at the same time, in the natural, some of you have let things slide in your home, and you're wondering why you have so much warfare. You know, you haven't stopped them from smoking pot around the perimeter of your home. You know, you don't allow that kind of activity around your home. Now it's not too late. Set up the boundaries and get to work, mama and daddy.